Hey, welcome, coaches. We are thrilled to have you join us today for the NHSACA webinar presented by Bound. Today, we have the privilege of welcoming an incredible speaker who's dedicated to helping athletes and coaches unlock their full potential, Julie Hatfield-Still. Julie, thank you so much for being with us. Julie is a tremendous leader in the field of mental performance and resilience, bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience to today's session. She understands the challenges that athletes as well as coaches face, and more importantly, how coaches can empower your athletes to navigate setbacks, adjust and adapt, and come back stronger. In this session, the mental agility ability, the science and strategies to help your athletes navigate setbacks, adjust, adapt, and come back. Julie will share the science behind the mental agility and provide proven strategies to help student athletes thrive in high pressure situations. So get ready for an insightful and impactful conversation. Please join us in welcoming Julie Hatfield-Still. Julie, thank you so much for being with us.
Scott, it's an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here.
Well, Julie, as we kind of get started, would you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself before you kind of hit into your presentation and maybe some of the background that you have, as well as, you know, the ability that you have to help others in this space?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how far back you want to go, but I've been in this industry for a couple decades in a lot of different facets of the industry. I have been a coach. I have been a collegiate athlete. I'm an author and I write for athletes. I write for coaches. I'm the executive director at the International Youth Conditioning Association, and just a new founder of a new nonprofit called Beyond the Game Alliance. So all of these things really uphold my mission to support and encourage coaches to make a positive impact, a long-lasting impact on our athletes. As a former athlete myself, I know the trials and tribulations and the turbulence that can happen in our athletic careers, and how being equipped for not just life in the game, but beyond the game is so, so important. And I just love this topic we're talking about today about mental agility, because it really, I've always been into the science and psychology behind human behavior and the way we operate as athletes. But the mental agility for me resonated so deeply and resonates so deeply because it's so applicable to what we already know as athletes: how to be agile, how to be quick, how to shift, how to move. So it really runs parallel to a lot of the things we already know, and therefore it becomes more implementable, because the psychology and science is great. The knowing is fantastic, but we must also know how to apply. And that's what I want to equip us with today. All right, so you ready to get started?
We're absolutely ready, Julie.
Share my screen. Fantastic. Scott, just let me know when you can see my screen.
You're good.
All right. So let's dig in. So today we're going to cover the science. I'm going to share with you 3 proven strategies, tried and true science-backed strategies that you can literally take from today, from watching this webinar, and apply it immediately to practice. If you have practice this afternoon, you can take it right into practice today. And then I'm going to give you a template to integrate the strategies that we talk about. Also, at the end of our presentation today, I'm going to share with you just a couple additional resources that might come in handy in this space, as well as a personal invitation for some of you who may want to go deeper on this topic with me. So let's get started. I wonder how many of you this picture resonates. How many of you have been in a place where you have an athlete that has so much potential and they just can't move past their last error? Or maybe they find themselves crumbling after a mistake, or really struggling with moving and shifting past something that keeps playing on rewind in their mind. If you have an athlete that maybe comes up against these roadblocks, then you're in the right seat today. You are in the right room. And if you can, just put it 10 in the chat. Put a 10 in the chat. If an athlete's coming to mind that you're like, man, I really want to help this athlete. I see the potential in them. And I know there is so much more that they are capable of. Awesome. Well, let's get started here. So this word mindset is something that is tossed around pretty readily these days. We need to fix our mindset. We need a better mindset. Well, I think there's something a little misleading about this word, because what it implies is that your mind is set, when in all actuality, that is so far from the truth. Our minds are not set. They are able to shift and they are able to be agile. So let's talk about what mental agility is. So mental agility is your ability to shift your thinking. I like to say it's our ability to shift from critical to creative. It's our ability to reframe a setback, right? Setbacks are inevitable in sport, in life. We're going to experience them. So our ability to reframe a setback is what mental agility is. It's also the ability to adapt in real time. Imagine if you have an athlete on the court or the field or in the pool or on the mat, and they can become aware, recognize, and be able to shift in that moment. Pretty powerful, right? It's also the ability to have mental flexibility over rigidity. You know, I'm going to tell a quick story here because I was among the thought process of, I will believe it when I see it, or my way or the highway. Okay. And that was in my athletic career as well as some periods of my coaching career. In my athletic career, I found myself my senior year of college, after years of this stoic, very set mind, I found myself on the sidelines crumbling at a game one day after a coach yelled at me, no different than I have ever been yelled at before. It just landed differently. There comes a point as athletes, we are trained to be stoic, we are trained to be strong. And sometimes we're trained to actually push and keep things under the surface until we can't. I never saw it coming as an athlete. And most likely, many athletes don't. We don't see it. We don't feel it coming. We just know that we're feeling maybe a little different. All right. So being able to have that flexible mindset, to be able to adjust versus be rigid, is incredibly important and definitely behind mental agility. And it's our ability to recover quickly. So in those moments, how do we come back? So to sum that up, I like to say mental agility is the ability to think flexibly, adapt quickly to changing circumstances, and shift from our cognitive strategies in response to new challenges or unexpected situations. Behind this is what we call neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, I'm going to cover what it is, how it works, and why it matters to us as coaches. So neuroplasticity, now we're going to get into a little bit of the sciencey stuff here, but I won't spend too much time here. I just think it's important for us all to be aware that this isn't just something I'm making up for you guys, okay? This is very much grounded in science, and I would encourage you to do research, to dig into this even deeper, especially if you feel pulled to. But I love neuroplasticity. So I can nerd out on this on days, but we'll keep it simple today. It's the brain's ability to rewire and reorganize itself by forming new neural pathways and connections based on experience and repetition. Neurons, in essence, in our minds, can change their conditions and their connections, and in different brain regions adapt to take on new roles if needed. Every time an athlete reacts to a mistake or a setback or an error, whether it's with frustration or with a quick reset and on to the next, they strengthen that corresponding pathway. So if our athletes are responding in a negative or unhelpful way, we are actually grooving those neural pathways. We're firing them and we're wiring them. Conversely, if we can support them in responding in a productive way, an effective way, a feel-good way, we are simultaneously building neural pathways that lead them more in that direction, okay? So why does this matter? Well, neuroplasticity is crucial in skill acquisition. It helps us recover from injuries and it builds mental resilience, which is something we're going to dig a little deeper in today. Training, mental training, repetition, and deliberate practice strengthens neural pathways, making movements and thought patterns more automatic. All right. So in other words, neuroplasticity shapes an athlete's default response. Okay. They don't have to think, you just see the response. Right. Mental habits determine whether an athlete lingers on a failure or refocuses immediately, shifts to the next play. I like to say thoughts become beliefs, beliefs cultivate habits, habits produce response or action, and response and action determines outcome. So if we're getting outcomes that are not favorable for the team, for that individual, for the goals that we have set forth, then what we really want to do is go all the way back to the thought that generated that belief, that generated those habits, that created actions, that therefore determined outcome. Action over time results. All right. So most of us, right, and I consciously have to think about this when I'm working with an athlete. So many of us say, all right, let's just try to change the habit. Let's change the action. All right. But that action is grounded often in a belief system and a thought process. Okay. All right. So much of neuroplasticity is used in response to a stressor. Right. So how many times do we get on the field, the court, or in the gym with our athletes, and they are experiencing a stress response? All right. Whether that be a good response, good stress, or negative stress, right? Stress is stress, and there's still a response that happens behind that. So you've probably heard of this: fight, flight, or freeze. We're going to go through these a little bit more in depth. However, these are triggered by a cascade of a hormonal response with cortisol and adrenaline. All right. These hormones are actually really beneficial for us in short doses. Matter of fact, it's been shown that cortisol sharpens focus and reaction time, but prolonged stress can result in fatigue, decision-making errors, and performance slumps. So an athlete in a slump is simply an athlete in a prolonged stress response. Okay. So stress response typically share symptoms. As coaches, we see some of these symptoms. In fight, this looks like frustration. The athlete makes a mistake and then they get frustrated. This may look like being argumentative with coaches or refs. This may look like reckless decisions, right? This may look like overcompensation. In my book, The Comeback Code, I talk about 3 typical responses to mistakes, and overcompensation is number 1. Next, stress response, flight. So these athletes share avoidance behaviors. They withdraw, they retreat, they disengage. You may see them play cautiously or hold back. I don't know about you, but I see a lot of that especially in the female athletic space. There's a lot of retreat that happens when we see errors, mistakes, and failure. Okay. And lastly, they freeze. So these athletes hesitate, they overthink, slow reaction time, and maybe they're a bit more self-critical than maybe what is deemed appropriate for that particular response. So fight, flight, and freeze are your typical symptoms of a stress response. And the things I shared with you are just some of those things to be looking for as a result of that cortisol and adrenaline release. So I'm going to pause here real quick to see if there's any questions before we move on to the mind-body connection.
Julie, we had one question come in here, and this is a great question. So when you think about you're dealing with your female athletes that do have any one of those responses, what are some good ways for our coaches to actually really try to connect with that kid? Because, you can always, as a coach, you can think of kids that are in all those responses. So could you briefly just run through just some really easy steps coaches can take when they run into an athlete that has either that fight, flight, or freeze kind of mentality? How can a coach help the kid overcome that? Because it's hard to do.
Well, It is hard to do. And I'm so glad you asked that, because my 3 strategies are 3 strategies that can help you really tune back in with that kid. So I'm going to share those a little bit later. But just right now, some things that you can do. So if you see them fighting and overcompensating, we want to bring them awareness, right? That might be just bringing them back to the present, maybe grounding them, all right, maybe reflecting with them, helping them really shift their mind. And my tools are going to help you do that. If you have an athlete that, say, is withdrawing, okay, you want to connect them back to the team. So my first strategy would be to get them doing high fives or a team cheer, or have another teammate go and give them a pat on the back. So they withdraw, you want to reconnect. All right. And if they're freezing and overthinking, then we want to reset them. And that's where my reset method comes in. And I'm going to share that today. You want them to, this reset to almost become automatic. So you want to practice it outside of occurrences. So when it's easy, right? When they're not in the heat of the moment or the error or the mistake, you actually want to equip them with these tools so that when they are, it's not the first time they're seeing them. Okay. So I hope that answers some of the question, but we are going to get into some of those strategies here in just a minute. Okay, fantastic. All right, so just in reflection of the science, so we've got the hormonal response, we've got the stress response, we've got the mental response, and there is also the physiological response. So there is a clear mind-body connection here, right? Every movement, every reaction and decision on the surface of play is shaped by an athlete's mental state. The way an athlete thinks, processes setbacks, and handles pressure directly impacts their physical execution. So if we don't like and they don't like what they're seeing physically, it is often tied to that thought process. So I'll share just a quick story here. I work, with several college athletes, and I had one at the end of last year, softball athlete, really struggling with her throw, overthrowing. She's been throwing for 12, 13 years. Okay. We knew it was all in her mind. There was a lot of mental chatter going on for her. And I supported her and gave her some of these tools to equip her. And she finished the season quite strong. Now we're in a new season. Okay. And just last week, she comes up to me and she says, "Coach, the thoughts are starting." And I was like, fantastic. I'm proud of you for recognizing that, 1. And 2, have you been practicing your flip the script strategy? Have you been, well, I've been really trying. I was like, look, for the next 24 hours, any time this thought comes out, I want you to just work on just stopping it and flipping the script on it. And the next day I followed up with her and she was like, "Coach, we caught it early. I feel great." Right. So it's not that these setbacks aren't going to happen. They are. Expect them to happen. Right. There's no cure for that. Matter of fact, there's a benefit for us to go through adversity. We can't build resilience if we don't go through the adversity, but we don't have to prolong it longer than it needs to be prolonged. So recognize those physical execution cues. That's the lagging indicator of a mental habit that may not be working for that athlete anymore. I like to say the outer game is a reflection of the inner game. The leading indicator, like I just said, to preferred outcomes is an athlete's mental attitude and approach. If you ultimately have an athlete who has high energy, really a helpful mindset, right, or mental attitude, just feels good, right? It feels good to feel good. And maybe they're not performing 100%. It's only a matter of time before their mind and their body integrate and you start to see the performance. So we want to cultivate that mental attitude that supports the ultimate goal of them experiencing a high level of performance and enjoyment in their sport. So we've gone through quite a bit already, but there are a number of benefits. And if you are able in the chat, I would love to hear from you as we go through on the benefits of which one of these benefits actually resonates most with you and the team or teams that you currently coach. All right. So the benefits of mental agility: it regulates the nervous system. It shifts athletes from a stress response to a state of focus and control. It shifts them from critical mode to creative mode. It promotes relaxation, clear decision-making, and optimal muscle coordination. It teaches the brain and body to work together under pressure. It improves reaction time, enhances and improves coordination, and regulates emotions and thoughts. And ultimately, we know when those things are working and going on, that overall performance improvements happen. So I want you to just connect real quick with which one of these do you think your team or teams can benefit most from right now? Yeah, the shift from stress to control, right? That's a great one. I love that it regulates their mood. I mean, how many of these benefits do we get to use in other areas of our life? All right, fantastic. Reaction time, yes. All right, who wants strategies? All right, we've covered the science. We know why this is important. Hopefully you've connected why it's important to you and your team, right? Because all of the reasons aren't for all of the coaches. There is a couple benefits that maybe right now your team could really utilize. So let's jump into these strategies. I'm going to cover 3 mental agility tools. My flip the script process, the reset formula, which could also be a setup formula, and my mental agility practice for reflection, my 4A method, right? These are about as simple as they come and highly implementable. I use them nearly every time I work with an athlete in this space. So let's talk flip the script. The purpose of flip the script is a reframing purpose and a thought stopping mechanism, right? So when you start getting those thoughts on rewind, I mean, how many times as a coach have we sat there and had thoughts on rewind? Oh man, they're going to miss this one. Oh man, I hope we can do this. Oh man, is it going in? Is it going in? Right? Like how many times have we even doubted ourselves in our capacity of coaching? Man, did I set them up? Are they ready? Do we have this? All right. Those thought processes actually perpetuate more of that current emotion and feeling. So we actually want to be able to stop those thoughts as coaches and say, they've got this. They're fully prepared. We've prepared, we've trained, we're ready. Now, we also want to bridge this to our athletes. So the process itself is simply first identifying the unhelpful talks, beliefs, and behaviors. Now, I often get this question. They're like, why do you say unhelpful? Why isn't it just negative? I was like, well, perception is reality. The reality is some of our athletes respond really well to what may be perceived as negative talk or negative thoughts, right? Some are motivated and inspired when some others aren't by those things. So I just say whatever's unhelpful, right? Because that's relative to everybody. Like, you know what? Me saying that I am not good enough is just not helpful. That's not helping, right? That might inspire somebody. That might drive somebody.
Hey, Julie, we got a question here. It's a great question, just
Fantastic.
pertaining to what you just talked about. It's simply this. How important is it for you as a coach to understand your athletes so you know which kids actually need, whatever tool, like the tools you're talking about? Like, so you have to have some sort of relationship built with these kids. So so you know which strategy to use almost. So how do you do that with your players? How do you define like how you can, use those tools for individuals? Because not every tool is going to work for every person all the time. You're going to have to, move in and out of the different tools that you're talking about.
Yeah, such a great question. I just wrote an article on this for the International Youth Conditioning Association
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
coaches
I
and
love it. Yeah,
about leveraging the learning styles of athletes in order to support and tailor coaching to them, right? So generally speaking, athletes, we learn, and we do as adults too, right? There's auditory, there's kinesthetic, there's written, there's verbal, right? And there's, I'm missing one, but we all learn differently. So it's understanding how that athlete, visual, right? Which many athletes are. Many athletes are visual and kinesthetic, and some need to see it written, or they need to see it on a screen or like that kind of visual. They need to study it. Okay. So when we're looking at these tools, we want to be thinking to ourselves, now some of these, and the reason why they're designed this way is they actually meet all of those different learning styles in one way or another. Okay. So they're designed because I know all athletes learn differently. We need one tool that we can go and it can resonate at some level with each and every one of them, right? But it's to your question, it is very important to know. And one of the best strategies, especially at the high school level, is to actually teach your athletes how to know how they like to be coached. So in other words, Sally, how do you like to learn in school? Do you prefer to see on the chalkboard or the smartboard? Do you prefer to hear and listen and read? Do you like to see by doing and be involved and actually maneuver? Okay, so one of the best ways for us to coaches to actually discern their learning styles is to actually understand how they like to operate in school when they're learning and ask them, right? And just ask them, like, how do you like direct communication? That's a whole nother lane, is how do you like to be communicated with? All right, so that's another space. But I hope that answers the question, gives you a little bit of strategy there.
That was perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, so flip the script combines all of this. I do recommend that athletes write this down, because there is power in getting the thought on paper and being able to articulate it, like being able to know that thought enough to say, hey, I can actually write it out. Okay, so on the left side, you're going to do unhelpful talk, beliefs, and behaviors. So going back to that athlete that I shared a story around, her grip, she kept telling herself her grip was messed up. Okay, my grip is messed up. I can't throw the ball. Okay, so she would start writing those things down. And some are behavior, some are just thought processes. And then we would work together on flipping that script. So, all right, your grip is messed up. You know what? How can you change that to be a more helpful thought process? And it might be something like, hey, don't focus on the grip, focus on the throw. Trust your throw. You've got this. You can do this. Okay? Just a simple little shift on where she was focused. You see, when we put focus on thoughts, we give them momentum. And like we talked about not too long ago, when we're putting focus on thoughts of momentum that aren't helpful, we are grooving neural pathways to create automatic response that aren't helpful. So what we want to do in this particular practice is actually start grooving those helpful neural pathways. And they've got to be able to identify that. So those of you in the room with us, just take a moment and think about maybe an athlete you have right now who has maybe articulated to you just a thought process that isn't helping him or her, or even for yourself as a coach. I don't know how many times I've had to really reflect and say, you know what? Me thinking this way about the team or about my athlete is actually not like something I want to give momentum to. Okay, so give that some thought. Now practice flipping that. What can you say instead? Okay, so if you're an athlete, I'm not good enough. I feel like I'm letting the team down. I get so nervous when the lights are on me, right? I always crumble under pressure. I'm in a slump. Okay, so all of those things are pretty unhelpful for most athletes. How can we flip them? I'm committed to my growth. I am a work in progress. I've trained for this. I have great coaching. I have support. Yeah, I missed the stressful free throw, right? Oh my gosh, I missed that shot. I'm going to keep missing the shot. And they do, because they give momentum to that thought, right? I don't like my coach. How could they reframe that? Hey, it's an opportunity to learn from different people. I don't have to like every coach, but I do want to respect and be guided and to be coached, right? So we just have to help most athletes start the reframe process. But once they get the hang of it, they get the hang of it. And I would just allow them to leverage this tool as they need. Now, mid-game, once your athletes have leveraged this tool, imagine this, mid-game, you have an athlete miss a free throw and you see the visceral response. You see the head hanging, the shoulder slumping, the physical response is there. And as coach, you say, hey, Johnny, flip the script. You got this. And they know what it means. And that's your coaching cue. Okay. And then they can use their reset or setup routine. All right. So we're going to shift into this routine. The purpose of the reset routine is just that. It's helped to reset an athlete in a time of either high stress, mistake, error, or struggling to bounce back, and set them up for further success. This could be used proactively as well as a setup routine. This could look like a pre-performance routine. It can look like for, say a pre-free throw routine, right? And these are all things that they'll just be equipped to practice with and leverage as they need. There is a formula for this. So you can really, I love formulas and frameworks because you can make them your own. And I think that's really important as coaches, is for us to have autonomy of choice in how we actually share this information, but also give our athletes the choice on how they actually create, their own formulas for success. There's 3 important pieces of this formula. I call them the 3 B's: the brain, the breath, and the body, right? Any reset routine or pre-performance or setup routine should include an element of brain and mental work, breath, which is incredibly important, and body. So how does this work? Brain. The purpose of this piece of your reset routine is to shift forward. It might be utilizing flip the switch or flip the script, okay? Affirmation is another good thing to trigger a brain flip, all right? These are some examples. These might be things just your athlete said to them, right? This becomes a routine. After an error, I'm stronger, I'm capable. I learn and grow from every challenge, right? They might just recite this in their mind. For some of your more audible athletes, they may say it out loud, and that's okay. They need to hear them say it through their own ears. Okay, so I wanted to give you some just examples to get the ideas rolling for you and what this could be for your athletes. Lastly, it could be a mantra. All right, so a mantra are just those short, I find mantras to be highly impactful at the higher levels because they're just real short, real poignant. Next play, next moment. Next play, best play. Strong mind, strong body. One of my favorites is be here now, because so much of our inability to shift is our ability to stay in the past, right? And if all we want to do is bring their brain to the present, right? How many times do we in say baseball or softball, leave it on the field, or any field sport, right? Leave it on the field, leave it between the lines. And they're like, all I can think about is what I just did 5 minutes ago, okay? So be here now, adapt and adjust. I am built for this, right here, right now. All of those sort of mantras, when said in the mind and even out loud, have incredible impact on our athletes' ability to shift quickly and swiftly. Now let's add the breath. I call the breath the rocket fuel. It's highly overlooked, but when we're in a state of high stress or anxiety, our breath shortens. Matter of fact, I watch many athletes breathe, and many of them do not take full breaths. So breath is literal oxygen to the brain, to the body, to the muscles, to the ability to recover and reset. So this is why this is so important. So those of you on the call with us, we're going to practice 3 techniques of breathing. Your athlete can pick any of these techniques that works best for them, okay? The first one is the box breath. This is probably pretty familiar to most. I think it's one of the most popular. And all that is, and if you guys just join with me, you're going to breathe in deeply through your nose for a count of 4. Then we're going to hold for 4, out for 4, and hold for 4, okay? So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, right? One box breath can work magic in a reset routine, okay? That's a great one for beginners. Another great one is simply a deep breath, a hold, and then an audible sigh. So everybody do that with me. You're going to go. Okay. Now I literally do it. And the shoulders drop. I feel relaxed. I feel a little bit of a vibration, a bit of energy. Okay. So that deep forced inhale, we get oxygen back in the brain, muscles, body. We hold. Whatever feels comfortable. I'm not going to tell an athlete how long to hold their breath for, although there are routines where we can encourage them to hold a little bit longer and retain breath. And then we sigh out audibly. That is quite literally them letting go of what just happened. Okay. And the last one, this is an activation. So I wanted to give you just one that was more relaxed. Second one, which is kind of an activate, but also a release. And then the third one is an activation. This is a nasal breath and it's rapid. So 5 deep nasal breaths in and out through the nose. It sounds like this. Okay, you do multiple ones of them. It's actually called fire breath, but this is just, if you do that, try it right now. 5 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the nose, forcibly. Okay, you're going to feel a vibration. You're going to feel an energy. If they are focused on breath, they cannot simultaneously be focused on their past mistake. So I'll say that again. If they are focused on breath, they cannot be simultaneously focused on their past mistake. All right, so we've got brain, we've got breath, and all these happen really quick. A reset routine is like 10 seconds. All right. Now we've got the body. What happens here? All right. So body is important. Talking about those kinesthetic athletes. Most athletes need to feel good. All right. So body might look like a tap. I have athletes just tap fingers, tap their chest, tap their leg, tap their glove. Okay. Athlete can clap. They can count 1, 2, 3. Okay. So that's a couple body. Shake it off, dust it off, literally. Okay. I have athletes just shake, or they just dust everything off. Okay. There's a lot of power to those words, coaches. We just want them to actually do those things, right? And they can physically do that, and it's going to shift their body. Now, for your athletes that tend to retreat, part of their reset routine might be a high five. It might be a handshake. Okay. They might run over to their point guard and run through a quick little handshake and a little elbow bump, right? When they make a mistake. Okay. A smile or a laugh, right? That completely shifts the brain from that critical to that creative mode, right? This is sometimes a little more forced for athletes, but even in the forcing of it, it becomes entertaining for them and they can really shift out. So let's create one for you. I just want you to take a moment, and I'm going to take a little breath here. And we're going to open for any questions we may have, but create as a coach. Okay. As a coach, we need our own reset routines before we step to the bench every day, before we step into the gym every day. How are we resetting so that we can teach them how to reset themselves? So you might have your own reset routine that you do right before you step in. Maybe you say, ready for a good day, and you tap the chest and you walk through the doors. Or let's do this thing. Right? That is an example of a coach's reset. Okay. Now what we do is we just give this tool to our athletes. All right. Did everybody create one? Just put in the chat. If you created one, say yes. Or if you have one, I've got it. Yes. All right. Now we're going to go on to my final strategy here. Okay. I love it. The purpose of the mental agility practice is a reflection. All right. So if it is true, and we know it to be true as coaches, that every single mistake is simultaneously a learning experience. Okay. When we can look at our mistake and say, what can I learn from this? How can I adjust and grow? That we win every single time. All right. So this is my 4A process for mental agility and practicing this particular skill in reflection. Number 1, it starts with awareness and acknowledgement. Number 2, we adjust, then we anchor, and then we act. All right. So here's what it looks like. So acknowledge what happened or what occurred that was a setback. So just acknowledge what it was. You know what? I didn't cut my angle right. I made a misstep and I came up short on my ball. Okay. What can you do differently to create a better experience? Or how can you respond differently in the future? You know what? I can just take an angle automatically, right? And then adjust from there. Okay. So you would walk your athletes through this. Anchor, what did you learn from this reflection or experience? How did you and can you grow from it? Well, I became really self-aware that my feet were stuck in the mud. Right? I got to get off my heels. All right, how will you take action as a result of this reflection? You know, I'm going to do some quick feet drills, and I'm going to work on my hip turns and plyo steps. Okay, so I mean, you're not going to have an athlete go through it that quickly, right? It's going to require a little bit of coaching through, but just to give you an example of how swiftly you can work with an athlete through a challenge and eliminate the momentum on the actual challenge itself and shift them into the pathway and the neural pathway that we actually want to create for them. One, action. Two, how do we adjust, right? And then take action in alignment with that adjustment. So I'm going to share with you guys where to place these in the practice, because I know some of you are thinking, all right, coach, I'll just add this thing to my long list of to-dos. Put a 10 in the chat if you're thinking that, because I know as a coach myself that you wear so many hats, that you have so many responsibilities, that there are things coming at you left and right. But I will say that it doesn't have to be in addition to. This is what we layer into what we already do. So I want to share this template for you. Feel free to take a screenshot. This is merely a template for a 2-hour practice and how I recommend integrating the tools that I just shared with you. I'll go through each of these and you guys make it work for you, right? This is highly, highly agile and adjustable to meet you where you're at. Now, I do recommend keeping practices to 2 hours because there is a point of diminishing return for longer practices. And I get some sports require some more technical abilities and technical coaching, and I understand all that. But I've said this for years working at the International Youth Conditioning Association that if we can't get done in 2 hours as coaches, we really have to reflect as coaches on our ability to manage our time and our plan and our energy, because they are most impactful in those 2 hours. Anything beyond that, you've probably noticed if you've had longer practices, it can get a little chaotic, right? They can go off the rails a bit more. They're a little less focused, and that's completely normal at the ages we're working with, all right? It's even, I mean, I work with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and to keep them reined in for 2 hours or really focused intensely can be a challenge. So looking at this schedule, you're always starting with pre-practice breath work and intention setting. So the breath work, again, lots of emphasis on breath work because it's something that they can do on their own and practice outside of practice, but it's something that more than likely you're going to have to cue initially. So you might spend a couple minutes, just have them take a couple deep breaths, and then you're going to share your practice plans. Hey, this is what to expect for today, guys. Then you're going to have them take 5 deep breaths and picture success at the end of practice for them. And then you're going to share intentions for the day. The team will share. All right. So at the high school level, having them articulate, you know what, we want high energy today. We want to execute drills. We want to stay focused. These are our intents for today's practice as a team. Right. And you're reflecting on those they're taking those breaths in reflection of, where do we want to be at the end of practice today? Do we want to feel really good about practice, or do we want to feel like that was a drag, right? So you're putting that onus on them. It takes 5 minutes, okay? Bring a whiteboard, have them write down as the team shares. Then you're going to go into your warm-up, your active and dynamic warm-ups, and simultaneously mental activation, and then your skill every day. So if you are not doing warm-ups are definitely a must. If you want more information on this, I'll give you some resources at the end. But your warm-up at this level, high school level, should be team-led and probably around 20 to 30 minutes. They're taking ownership of this warm-up. They're doing the active dynamic warm-ups with intentional breath work, which you might have to cue. Hey, guys, as you do your high knee squeezes, make sure we're taking deep breath in and exhaling. Like, just focus intently on your breath for the next 2 minutes of warm-ups and just extend that practice time for them of the breath work and intentional work. You're going to do your injury prevention every day. Okay. Shoulder work, hip work, anything specific to that sport. And then you're going to do your skill warm-ups. So you're going to do your everyday basic foundational skill warm-ups. Right? Again, takes about 30 minutes. You're integrating just the breath work. And when they're doing their skill warm-ups, they can also practice their reset routine. Like if they miss a backhand or they miss a pass, right, they can just practice their reset routine. Then about 20 to 30 minutes of technical work. You can add pressure in those elements, distractions, challenges to force them into failure sometimes, or to put some pressure on them. And that's where flip the script and the reset comes in as needed. Okay, so these are tools that you just kind of pull out of your toolbox if it's needed. And then you go into more strategic situations or gameplay, like scrimmages, problem-solving games. It doesn't have to be related to your sport. It could be just fast-thinking games. They could be basketball players. You can throw a soccer ball in front of them, right? And you want them to get moving in a different capacity. That's going to challenge them. And you may use things like flip the script or reset as needed during those times as well. And then finally, if you add in some sport specific or just sport enhancement, performance development, speed agility, strength and core, power development, this is where I often integrate a lot of my mental agility tactics because when they are gassed in, that's where we see a lot of crumbling, right? So it's an opportunity to encourage them to reset. Hey, when you're moving from this drill to this drill and you're gassed, do your reset routine. Take that inhale, right? Add the body, add the brain work, shift the brain from I can't, I'm exhausted to I can, I've got this. And let's keep moving. Okay, so that's a great place to integrate some of these strategies. And then lastly, the 4A framework comes in incredibly handy at the end of practice. After they do a little bit of cool down and mobility, you can do a team reflection. Hey guys, what worked today? What didn't work? What do we need to adjust? This gives you as a coach a great frame for the next practice. What did we learn as a result of our work today? And what would you guys recommend moving forward, right? So you give them some autonomy in this practice and some self-reflection. Or is there anything individually that you need to work on? And you're just holding space for them to reflect. Now, I hope that you see that this can be layered in quite simply. Now, this is an ideal plan. Okay, start with one. If you start today or tomorrow at your practice with practice breath work and intention setting, number one, first 5 minutes, and that's all you do, it is a massive win. If you show up to practice and you teach them flip the script, it's a massive win. Right? So we start with one and we layer in as we see we need these tools, as our athletes' responses maybe are moving directions that we know that we can help them shift. As I promised, I want to share a few resources. I mentioned the International Youth Conditioning Association. I'm the executive director there, brand executive. The CEO has been gracious to give me a discount code for anybody who wants some certifications. We have high school certifications. We focus specifically on youth and proper training mechanisms, strength and conditioning, speed and agility for youth. I will just say YouTube is not the place to figure out how to train our high school athletes. It is not the place. Look for credibility. It may not be us. There's a lot of credible resources out there. I would just say do your due diligence. But if you do happen to choose the IYCA, we'd love to give you 30% off for the month of March. So feel free to take a screenshot of that code. Beyond the Game Alliance is my nonprofit. I help athletes shift really from that space of in the game to beyond the game. So we have coaches all over the globe in financial coaching, career coaching, nutrition coaching, mental agility coaching, sports psychology, all of that. So we're just a one-stop shop for athletes who might need a little bit additional support. Those are my books on Amazon if you have any interest. But I just wanted to say, for some of you, if this information resonated with you today, and you're like, hey, you know what? I want to know a little bit more. I want to be able to help my team at a deeper level in this. I want to be able to get on the phone with you. I think collaboration is the best mechanism when it comes to this, because every single athlete and every single team is so very different, and your goals and vision for your team's different. So we would just get on a call and connect around what the opportunities are for your team. And I do have some capacity in the next couple of weeks. So just reach out to me and give me your name and we'll start the conversation. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for the time. I hope these strategies, I hope this science, I hope that practice template if anything, becomes incredibly valuable to you and a tool that you can use for your athletes in the game and beyond. Thank you, Scott.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Julie, so much for being with us today. Thank you to all of our coaches and athletic directors for joining us today. We hope you found this session insightful and are leaving with some valuable strategies to help your athletes develop mental agility, overcome those setbacks, and come back stronger. A huge thank you to Julie for sharing her expertise and providing us with some really great practical tools to applying into our coaching. Remember, building resilience is a journey. And as coaches, you play a crucial role in shaping not only your athletes' skills, but also their mindset for success. Thank you again to Bound for presenting this webinar and to the NHSACA for bringing us together. Keep pushing forward, keep inspiring, and we'll see you at our next session.